11:32 at night. The doorbell jingles for the last time. The last customer has just left. The restaurant falls silent. And it's in that silence that Keisha finally hears the truth she's been avoiding for 8 years. She's 34 years old, works double shifts every day, raises her son on her own, pays the bills, survives. But surviving isn't the same as living. And that night, standing in the middle of the empty restaurant, with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the smell of grease clinging to her skin, she realizes something that hurts more than exhaustion. She realizes the years have gone by, and she stayed still, in the same place, serving, cleaning, repeating, using motherhood as an excuse, using fear as a shield, using routine as a prison. But that night would be different, because sometimes everything has to go quiet, so we can finally hear ourselves. This is Keisha's story, a waitress, a single mom, a woman who survived until the day she decided to live, and what she discovered that night might change your life too. The alarm went off at 5:15 in the morning. Keisha reached out by instinct, fingers searching for her phone while her eyes fought to stay shut. The shrill sound echoed through the small apartment bedroom in Atlanta, Georgia, where thin walls let in the noise of neighbors and the traffic on Peachtree Street. 34 years old. 8 of them at the same restaurant, 6 raising Jaden alone, ever since Marcus decided fatherhood didn't fit into his plans of becoming a music producer in Los Angeles. Keisha got up, stepping onto the cold floor. Jaden was sleeping on the sofa bed in the living room. She always thought about switching bedrooms with him. When things get better, she told herself, always when. In the bathroom, she brushed her teeth staring at her reflection in the stained mirror. Deep, dark circles, lines on her forehead that hadn't been there 2 years ago, curly hair pulled into a rushed bun, quick foundation, subtle lipstick, black pants, white shirt with the Magnolia Diner logo. 6:30. She left quietly, leaving a note on the fridge. Coffee's ready. Don't forget your math homework. Love you, Mom. Jaden, 8 years old, already knew the routine by heart. The subway was packed. Keisha held onto the metal strap, swaying with the motion while staring out the dirty window. Other tired faces, men in coveralls, women in uniforms, everyone going, no one arriving. The Magnolia Diner sat on a busy intersection near downtown. A low red brick building, neon sign flickering, open 24 hours. The smell of bacon hit Keisha before she even pushed the door open. Morning, Keisha. James, the cook, waved from the kitchen. Carol showed up with the clipboard. You take tables 6 through 12. Tiffany's covering the other side. The morning exploded. Executives ordering scrambled eggs, truck drivers wanting pancakes, moms with kids spilling cereal all over the floor. Keisha smiled, took orders, carried trays. Always my pleasure. Always a smile that never reached her eyes. Her shift ended at noon, but she stayed. Double shift. $60 extra before taxes. Maybe 20 or 30 more in tips if she got lucky. Jaden needed new sneakers. At 2 in the afternoon, she sat in the storage room eating half of a leftover sandwich. Her feet throbbed. She closed her eyes, resting her head against the cold wall. 9 years earlier, she'd been at Spelman College, majoring in business administration. Second year, good grades, plans to open a salon, maybe start a line of products for natural hair, notebooks full of ideas. Then came the pregnancy, the decision to keep the baby, Marcus leaving, dropping out of college. Keisha, table 9. She stood up, tossed the rest of the sandwich, went back to the floor. 6 p.m. 7, 8. Couples having dinner, teenagers laughing too loud, lonely customers reading newspapers, stretching 1 cup of coffee for an hour. At 9:40, she wiped down the last table. Carol had already left. James was finishing up the kitchen. Tiffany had clocked out at 10 o'clock. Jaden should already be asleep. Mrs. Patterson was watching him, another $20 out of the budget. She tucked the tips into her pocket. $42. Slow day. Before leaving, she stopped at the door and looked back. The empty restaurant under fluorescent lights. Tables lined up. That lingering smell of grease. 8 years. Every day the same. At home, Jaden slept hugging his teddy bear. She kissed his forehead, pulled the blanket up. In the bedroom, she took off her uniform and sat on the bed, grabbed her phone, opened old photos. There she was at 23, high school graduation. At 25, birthday party, red dress, hair down in perfect curls. She couldn't remember the last time she'd worn a dress. She put the phone away, turned off the light. Tomorrow at 5:15 the alarm would ring again. The following Thursday, the shift started the same. Same tables, same faces, same rush. But something was different in Keisha. Since Monday, a strange feeling had followed her, like she was watching her own life from the outside, in slow motion. At 9:50 that night, the last customer paid his bill. A man in a gray suit who barely looked up when she brought the change. 10% tip. He pushed open the glass door and the metal bell jingled for the last time that shift. Keisha stood still in the middle of the dining room. James had already turned off the fryers. Carol had left at 8:30, leaving her the side door key. Tiffany had asked to leave early because her son had a fever. It was just her. The empty restaurant felt bigger. The fluorescent lights hummed in a low tone. The old air conditioner made a rhythmic, almost hypnotic noise. Keisha started gathering the last coffee cups, stacking plates, wiping down tables with automatic movements. Silence. Strange how silence hurt more than noise. During the day, she barely had time to think. It was all reacting, serving, smiling, writing, carrying, cleaning, repeating. Mind on autopilot, body doing the work. But now, with the restaurant empty and only the buzzing lights, the thoughts started creeping in, the ones she pushed down every single day. Keisha stopped in front of the glass window, staring out at the street. A few cars drove by, people walking fast. A couple laughing as they went into a bar across the sidewalk. She watched the woman, blue dress, high heels, loose hair swaying, laughing. When was the last time she'd laughed like that? She checked her phone. 10:15. A message from Mrs. Patterson. Jaden ate dinner and is sleeping. Everything's fine here. Keisha typed a thank you and put the phone away. She kept cleaning, straightened the sugar packets, reorganized the salt shakers, tasks that didn't need to be done, but filled the emptiness. Her phone buzzed again. She unlocked it and, without thinking much, opened Instagram. It had been weeks since she last checked. The feed loaded slowly. Photos of people she knew from college. Tanisha, who graduated in marketing, now working at an agency in New York. Pictures in a modern office. After-work drinks. Weekend trips. Keisha scrolled. Simone had opened a yoga studio in Charleston. Photos teaching classes, wide smile, peace written all over her face. She scrolled again. Marcus. She froze. She didn't follow him, but the algorithm kept pushing him anyway. There he was, in a recording studio in LA, headphones around his neck, arm around a woman with pink hair. Caption, blessed and grinding. New project dropping soon. Keisha locked the phone and slipped it into her pocket, walked behind the counter, rested her hands on the cold metal surface, took a deep breath. Her chest tightened. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was worse. It was the sharp realization that 9 years had passed. 9 years since she'd had plans of her own. 9 years living in survival mode. She looked around. Cracked red vinyl chairs, black and white checkered floor, worn thin near the entrance. The soda machine with the broken Sprite button, grease-stained laminated menus. 8 years working there. How many tables had she cleaned? How many plates had she carried? How many times had she said, "Enjoy your meal," without thinking? Keisha walked to the foggy mirror near the bathroom, looked at herself. Wrinkled uniform, dark circles no makeup could hide anymore, dry hands, short nails with no polish. 34 looking like 40. Who was she now? A mother, of course, always a mother. But before that? Beyond that? She rested her forehead against the cold glass, closed her eyes, remembered being 20, when she believed the world was big and full of possibilities, when she thought she had time, always time, but time didn't wait, it passed. And she stayed right there serving coffee, wiping tables, surviving. Keisha opened her eyes and stepped away from the mirror. The night wasn't over yet. She still had to close the register, lock the door, catch the subway, get back home. Tomorrow was Friday. Another double shift, Friday night. The Magnolia was packed, families celebrating the weekend, groups of friends filling the big tables, the noise of conversations mixing with clinking silverware and plates. Keisha moved on autopilot, balancing trays, refilling glasses, forcing smiles. 10:30. The crowd started thinning. 10:45. Only 3 tables left. 11 o'clock. 2 tables. 11:15. One last customer, a man around 60, alone, reading a hardcover book while finishing a slice of apple pie. Keisha wiped the other tables, gathered glasses, put away the salt shakers. James had already gone home. Carol, too. She checked the clock every 5 minutes, doing the math in her head. 11:28. The man closed his book, left $15 on the table, tip included, and stood up. He gave Keisha a small nod. "Good night, thank you. Good night. Drive safe." He pushed the door open. The metal bell jingled. The door closed slowly, the latch echoing through the empty dining room. Silence. Keisha stood still in the middle of the restaurant, the tray still in her hands. She looked at the door, looked at the empty tables, looked at the clock on the wall. 11:32. The last customer was gone. She set the tray on the counter and walked to the door, flipping the sign from open to closed. Through the glass, the street was quiet. A few cars passed by. The streetlights cast orange circles on the wet asphalt. It had rained earlier that night. Keisha locked the door. The click of the lock sounded louder than it should have. She turned around. The empty restaurant stared back at her. Fluorescent lights lighting up every corner. Red chairs neatly lined up. Clean tables. Shiny floors. Everything in place. Everything silent. She walked over to the table where the last customer had been, picked up the $15, folded the bills, slipped them into her pocket, took the empty plate, the coffee cup with one last sip left at the bottom, carried everything to the kitchen, set it in the sink, walked back to the dining room. Silence again. But this time something was different. The silence wasn't just the absence of noise, it was presence. The presence of thoughts she could no longer push down. The presence of questions with nowhere left to run. Keisha sat down in one of the chairs. Something she never did. In 8 years working there, she had never sat like a customer. Always on the other side, always serving. She rested her elbows on the table, looked around. From there, the restaurant felt different. Smaller, sadder. The cracks in the ceiling were easier to see. The peeling paint near the door. The lingering smell of grease that clung to clothes, skin, hair. She took a deep breath. The hum of the industrial fridge, the ticking of the clock, the air conditioner turning on and off. Sounds she never noticed during a shift, now deafening. Keisha picked up her phone. 11:43. Opened her messages. Nothing new. Opened her photos. Scrolled back to the oldest ones. Jaden as a baby. Jaden taking his first steps. Jaden on his first day of school. She scrolled more. Photos of herself. 23. Graduation. 25. Parties. 26. Pregnant, but smiling. 27. Holding newborn Jaden. Tired eyes, but full of hope. Hope. When did hope turn into just endurance? She put the phone away, stood up, walked back to the window. Outside, the world kept moving. Cars passing. People living. Going forward. Changing. And her? She was standing still. How long had she been standing still? Keisha rested her forehead against the cold glass, closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed the truth to surface. The truth she avoided every single day. The truth hidden behind the rush, behind the exhaustion, behind the excuse that she didn't have time to think. The truth was simple, and it hurt. She wasn't living. She was just surviving. And survival wasn't life. Keisha opened her eyes. The street outside looked the same, but something inside her had cracked. The silence was no longer just silence. It was a question. Keisha was still standing by the window when the clock struck midnight, the cold glass against her forehead, her breath fogging it up. Outside, the city kept moving. Indifferent, she stepped away from the window and walked back to the center of the dining room. Stopped, looked around one more time. Every detail now seemed to scream something she had always ignored. Table 5, where Mr. Thompson drank coffee every morning for 6 years. Table 8, where teenagers gathered after school. Table 12 by the window, the couple's favorite. She knew every corner, every stain on the floor, every chair that wobbled, every crack. 8 years. Keisha pulled out a chair and sat down again. This time, not to rest her feet, but because her legs couldn't carry the weight of the realization that had just crashed down on her. The truth wasn't that she worked too much. It wasn't that life was hard. It wasn't that raising a child alone required sacrifice. The truth was that somewhere along the way, she had stopped being Keisha and become only Jaden's mom or the waitress at Magnolia, as if there was nothing beyond that, as if she didn't deserve anything more. And the worst part, she had allowed it. At first it made sense. Jaden was a baby. He needed her. Money was tight. There was no room for dreams. Survival was urgent. But the years passed. Jaden grew. And she stayed in the same routine because it was safe, because it was familiar, because change was scary. Raising her son had become the perfect excuse not to risk anything. Keisha felt her chest tighten. It wasn't Jaden's fault. Never was. He was the best thing that ever happened to her, but she had used motherhood as a shield, as a reason to postpone everything, to not try, to not fail. I can't go back to college now. I have to take care of Jaden. I can't look for another job. This one is safe. I can't invest in myself. The money is for Jaden. All true. And all lies too. Because deep down she knew it wasn't just about Jaden. It was about fear. Fear of trying and not making it. Fear of discovering she might not be good enough. Fear of leaving her comfort zone, even if that zone was exhausting and suffocating. Keisha stood up and walked to the mirror near the bathroom, stared at her reflection again. But this time, she didn't look away. "Who are you?" she asked out loud, her voice echoing through the empty dining room. The woman in the mirror didn't answer. She just stared back, tired, lost. Keisha thought about Jaden, the way he looked at her, with admiration, like she was the strongest person in the world. And she was strong. She survived. She raised him alone. She paid the bills. There was always food on the table. But what example was she setting? That you work until you're drained? That dreams are a luxury? That life is just about holding on? No, she didn't want that for him. She wanted Jaden to believe change was possible, that it was possible to start over, that mistakes don't define your future, that fear is part of it, but it can't freeze you. And how would he learn that if she didn't believe it herself? Keisha closed her eyes, took a deep breath, felt something shift in her chest. It wasn't hope yet. It wasn't certainty. It was just a crack, a possibility. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe she could still be more than this. Not for Jaden, for her. Because she deserved it too. She opened her eyes, looked at the wrinkled uniform, the tired hands, the dark circles, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel just exhaustion. She felt anger. Anger at wasting so much time being afraid. Anger at convincing herself she didn't deserve more. Anger at settling for so little. But anger, she realized, was better than resignation. Anger meant there was still life, still desire. Keisha looked around the restaurant one last time. Magnolia had fed her for 8 years, but it had also trapped her. And now she had to decide. Stay or change. Survive or live. She walked to the counter and sat on the high stool, something Carol forbade during shifts. But Carol wasn't there. No one was. It was just her and the decision she had to make. Stay or go. Simple as that. And terribly complicated. Staying meant security. A paycheck every month, even if it was small. Tips, even if they fluctuated. A familiar routine. No surprises. No risks. Jaden had food on the table, a clean school uniform, a roof over his head. Leaving meant uncertainty. Trying something new with no guarantees. Risking what little she had. And if it went wrong? What if she couldn't make it? What if it got worse? Keisha picked up her phone, opened the Notes app, started typing, as if putting it into words would make it clearer. What do I really want? She stopped, deleted it, typed again. What do I want? When was the last time she asked that question? When was the last time I didn't come with, but Jaden needs, or, but now's not the time, she thought, took a deep breath, and typed, finish college, work with something that makes sense, have time with my son, not feel exhausted all the time, feel alive again. She read the words on the screen. They felt impossible and simple at the same time. Was it selfish to want that? She thought about Jaden again. Imagined him at 15, then 20, then 25. What kind of man would he be? What lessons would he carry? If she stayed like this, he'd learn that giving up your dreams is noble, that sacrifice equals love, that erasing yourself is the way. But if she changed, he'd learn that starting over is possible, that courage isn't the absence of fear, but acting despite it, that taking care of others starts with taking care of yourself. Keisha locked her phone and looked at the front door. Outside, the world kept moving, people going forward, changing, trying. Why couldn't she try too? Then the voice of fear whispered, what if you fail? Keisha answered out loud, alone in the empty restaurant. What if I don't try? Silence. The question echoed, and it was scarier than the first. She stood up and walked to the small back room, where Carol kept paperwork and schedules, opened the drawer, grabbed the old notebook she used to list tasks, tore out a blank page, sat at the broken little table and started writing. Not a grand plan, not a revolution, just steps. Small ones, possible ones. 1. Research scholarships to go back to college, online, part-time. 2. Look for a job with fixed hours, no double shifts. 3. Talk to Mrs. Patterson about watching Jaden a few nights a week. 4. Save $50 a month, even if that's all. 4 things. Nothing crazy, nothing impossible, but 4 things more than she had done in the last 8 years. Keisha folded the paper and slipped it into her pocket. She felt its weight there, light but real. She checked the clock. 12:20. She needed to close the register, turn off the lights, lock everything up. But first, she walked to the window one last time. She looked out at the street, at the cars, the lights, life happening out there. For years she watched from the inside, serving, cleaning, waiting for something to change on its own. But change doesn't knock on your door. Change has to be called, invited in, built. Keisha took a deep breath. She wasn't ready. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know if it would work. But she knew one thing. Staying the same was giving up. And she wasn't going to give up. Not again, not anymore. She turned and walked to the register, closed the drawer, counted the bills, filled out the report, turned off the dining room lights one by one until only the exit light remained, grabbed her bag, her keys, walked to the door. Before she left, she looked back one last time. The Magnolia Diner. 8 years of her life, but not the rest of it. Keisha stepped outside, locked the door, and headed for the subway. Tomorrow would be Saturday, her day off, and Monday. Monday would be different. Monday morning. The alarm went off at 5:15, like always. But Keisha didn't hit snooze on autopilot. She lay there for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, breathing slow. Something was different. Not in the room. Not in the apartment. In her. She got up, made coffee, woke Jaden with a kiss on the forehead. He rubbed his eyes, still half asleep. Morning, Mom. Morning, baby. She smiled. A real smile. While Jaden ate breakfast, Keisha pulled out the folded paper she'd kept in her bag since Friday, opened it, read the 4 steps again. Small, possible, real. On the subway, instead of staring out the window lost in her head, she grabbed her phone and searched. Online degree completion programs. Scholarships for single moms. Job openings with regular business hours. She wrote down links. Saved pages. It wasn't a perfect plan, but it was a start. She got to Magnolia at 7 on the dot. Carol was at the register counting bills. Morning, Keisha. Morning, Carol. Keisha tied her apron, grabbed her tray. The day started the same. Customers walking in. Orders being called out. Coffee being poured. But Keisha was different. She was paying attention. Watching. She noticed Mr. Thompson, who came in every day alone since his wife passed. She noticed Mrs. Jenkins, who always ordered pancakes but only ate half because her medication killed her appetite. She noticed the tired faces, the untold stories, the humanity behind every order. For years she served without seeing. Now she saw. On her lunch break, instead of eating in a rush in the storage room, Keisha walked to the small public library 2 blocks from the restaurant. She stepped inside. The smell of books hit her like a forgotten hug. She went straight to the public computer. Searched. Filled out an application for the Online Business Administration Completion Program at Georgia State University. There was a fee, but she could pay in installments. She clicked Submit, her heart racing, hands sweating. But she did it. She went back to Magnolia. The afternoon shift rolled on. 6 o'clock, 7, 8. At 9, Carol called Keisha into the back room. Sit down for a minute. Keisha sat, her chest tightening. Had she done something wrong? Carol crossed her arms, but her face was calm. How many years you been here, Keisha? 8. 8 years. Never late. Never no call, no show. You work double shifts without complaining. Carol paused. But I see you. You know, I can tell when somebody's just hanging on. Keisha didn't know what to say. I've been there, Carol continued. I stayed stuck in a job that wasn't taking me anywhere because I was scared to take a risk. By the time I finally left, I'd already lost years. She looked Keisha dead in the eyes. Don't make the same mistake I did. Keisha felt her eyes burn. If you want to switch shifts, cut your hours, I'll make it work. If you want to leave, I get it. But don't stay here because you think you don't have a choice. You always do. Keisha nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Thank you, Carol. Now go on, Carol said softly. It's time you get home. Keisha left Magnolia at 9:30. The bell jingled when she pushed the door open. Outside, the night air was cool. She stopped on the sidewalk and looked up at the neon sign flickering. She still didn't know if she was going to leave or stay. She didn't know if college would work out. She didn't know if she'd get everything she wanted, but she knew she was going to try. And for the first time in years, that was enough. At home, Jaden was still awake, drawing at the little table in the living room. "Mom, look what I made!" It was a drawing of her, smiling, wearing a superhero cape. "You're the strongest woman in the world," he said, proud. Keisha dropped to her knees and hugged her son tight. "And you make me want to be even stronger." That night, before bed, Keisha didn't scroll through old photos on her phone. She opened a brand new document, typed a title, My Plan, and she started writing the future. Not the perfect future, the possible one, and that was more than enough. Surviving isn't the same as living. Sometimes change starts when everything goes quiet, and we finally hear ourselves. If this story touched you, share it with someone who's been putting their own life on hold. Maybe today is the last customer before the truth shows up.